So before we get started and go further, a couple of, announcements from my end. So I will apologize a little bit if I'm a little raspy this morning. I've been fighting a sinus infection since Friday. The antibiotics are kind of kicking in, and so I'll be fighting through that a little bit. So bear with me if I'm having to stop and take drinks and clear my throat, just so you guys know why. A little bit about myself. Let me give you a little bit of background. So as you just heard, I lead the client services group for Ingram Micro, ITAD, and reverse logistics. I'm responsible for driving the company's overall strategic growth and expansion plans for the Americas. I've been in this space, RL, ITAD, for about 20 years. So been kind of living this world for quite some time. Started off in the RL space. We'll talk a little bit about that and the connectivity between reverse logistics and ITAD. And I live in Austin, Texas. Great city. If you haven't ever had a chance to come, you should try to get out and see it. It's a great place. We're very proud of it. And I always try to start whenever I get to do speeches or get to talk to folks. I always think it's important to, we have a very diverse group of folks here, multicultural, many different nationalities, and so that everybody understands, English is really my second language. My primary core language is of course, Texan. So I always want to do this, and I always think it's important to walk through some of these before we go into a presentation, because during the presentation, you're bound to hear a handful of these so that we understand what I'm talking to, what I'm referring to. I'd like to share some of these with you guys. Standard, basic, you guys all know y'all, right? You'll hear that multiple times. Ain't, that's really a core part of my language. But some of my favorites. Get her done. I'm sure you guys have heard that. We don't say all right, we say all right. All right. We don't say tour. Like if you're going to go tour a facility, we say we're going to go tour a facility. And we drop G's on everything. So we don't go swimming, we go swimming. So just a little insight to give you some visibility into some of the things that we'll be talking about. If you hear some language you don't understand, maybe now you understand a little better. So before we get started, why the evolution of ITAD, right? Why is it important to talk about the evolution of ITAD, where we've been, where we are, where we're going? And I think for me, when we started talking about this presentation, I felt it really important to address kind of the big question that everybody has right now. With the announcement that Arrow made of them exiting this industry, there's a lot of questions floating around about the relevance of this business, right? Is this business sustainable? Can you make money at this business from a long-term perspective, right? What's the next shift in this industry that we all need to see and understand as we move forward? So defining why ITAD is relevant, defining what the future looks like, where we're going, I think is extremely important for us as an industry. Not only looking back to see where we've come from, but then looking forward to see where we're going. You'll hear me talk about control today. You'll hear me talk about the ITAD of today is not the same ITAD of tomorrow, right? There's going to be lots of changes, lots of shifts, lots of directional and functional adjustments in our business. So I think that is really the focus of today. We'll do an outline and go backwards a little bit, spend a little bit of time talking about where we came from, right? Where this market came from, where this industry came from. Then we'll take a little bit longer look at where we are today, right? What's happening in our world today? And then we'll shift gears and spend most of our time, a majority of our time, in where we're going in the future. So let's jump in, do a little history review, and keep going from there. So as you'll see, I kind of break it down in phases. And within these phases, I put two buckets for you guys so that you understand kind of where I was coming from. The first bucket is a client's perspective. of where this industry started. The second bucket is a customer's perspective. A service provider's perspective of where this industry has come from, where we're going. So it started back in the day, right? Recycling e-waste. That was really the starting point of the ITAD industry. So from a client organizational perspective, where were we, right? Where were our clients? Where was the client base, right? They were looking for solutions to really kind of dispose of hardware. That was a pretty basic standard approach. They weren't looking much past that. Really looking at data center was a big key component. Systems at that time were large, bulky, right? Lots of materials, lots of I'll use another term, lots of goodness in the assets, right? So that was really kind of a core starting point for our clients in thinking about, the typical office worker had a desktop and maybe a monitor, right? Maybe two assets that would fall into our world today. Like I said, everything was big, bulky, large, heavy. And then you shift over and you start thinking about service providers. And really at that phase one, where were we at with that from a services perspective? Primary services were around dismantle, harvesting parts, materials for sort, recycle, some consideration around refurbishment, but in data security and value recovery, but it really wasn't on the forefront early on in this space, right? Profitability relied on the commodities, right? We were breaking down assets and making money off commodities, and the volatility of the secondary market was really a driver in the growth from a reuse perspective. It's interesting, if you think back in the, early 90s, early 90s, I worked at an employer called Data Exchange, or DEX. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Data Exchange. Back in that time, we were doing reverse supply chain services, right? Reverse logistics services. And within that reverse supply chain, value recovery was just a module within the reverse supply chain, right? And at this point in history, in our history, we had some smart guys realize that there was some decent money to be made by taking the value recovery piece out of the reverse supply chain and making it a standalone business. So that was really phase one. From our world, right, from the industry world. And then all of a sudden we shifted into this accountability and data security world, right? And that changed the dynamic of where we played and what we did and how we did. All of a sudden we saw data and environmental regulations start to come about, right? You saw HIPAA, GLB, Sarbanes-Oxley, the e-Stewards pledge was made, the e-Steward certification and R2 certification in 2006. However, there was still a minimal understanding of hardware and value in the secondary market, right, from our customers' perspective. Still no really internal resources to manage what we were calling ITAD, right? They were really kind of still calling it asset management, not necessarily ITAD. And they may have one person with an entire global organization paying a little bit of attention to assets and data. But all of a sudden in this phase of our history, we start seeing data breaches. We start seeing news, right? It's all of a sudden we're starting to see some traction behind exposure, if you will. And so from a service provider's perspective, we had to start shifting our focus to looking beyond disposal, right? Increased focus on serializing assets, control, right? Data erasure and destruction becoming a more prominent focus point for how we were servicing our customers, how we were selling to our customers, how we were engaging with our customers. The framework of the future started here. If you think about how we engage with customers today, you think about our industry today, you think about what the services we provide today, this is the phase where the framework for today started to build out, right? This is where our future started taking place. The risk and the need, right, being identified. At the same time, we as an industry started selling on risk, right? And think about that. We started selling on risk. We started selling our customers on risk, and then all of a sudden we shifted to liability, right? This whole world of unlimited liability versus not unlimited liability. This is the phase of life when all these components started coming together. our customers started getting savvy. They started learning ITAD. They started understanding. They knew record retention and reporting became a core part of what we had to be able to provide them. And ITAD was now shifting to become a standard component of end-of-life management for a greater scale, right? Not just the Fortune 100. It was now scaling down to the Fortune 1000, the Fortune 2000, the Fortune 5000 of people paying attention to what we were doing, the services that we were providing. And then good old value recovery came into play and changed everything, right? Now you start talking about revenue streams. Now you start talking about being able to drive value back to customers and them seeing dollars or net neutral fees for a service that they were generally having to pay for in the past. So endpoint devices sales increased in the secondary market. So your distributed assets all of a sudden shifted gears, right? Took on a whole new life. The secondary market went from being a smaller controlled environment to this really large scale, expansive market. We started seeing an increase of acceptance of non-OEM refurbished hardware in that secondary market, right? Not only from a consumer perspective, but all of a sudden now in the commercial space, we're seeing this shift away from it having to be new. This is where all of a sudden we also shifted from an ITAD perspective of being a really secondary service, an afterthought. Right? You guys remember the days, right? You try to go sell somebody and try to engage with the customer. Most folks would say, what in the world is ITAD? They had no idea. At this phase is when we started seeing our customers put us into the primary box, right? Now they are budgeting for services. They are budgeting for ITAD service. So this was a major shift in our space, a major shift in our market. Still not core, still not primary, but we're making our way there. Right? From a service provider, this is the hook. This is where we shifted our mindset as well, right? This is where risk mitigation coupled with value recovery started to play into our world. Think about it. We all sell on that today, right? We all build our business. Some of the foundational building blocks of our business are built on those two components. So that is a key part of really the culture of ITAD today. Remarketing channels continue to expand. Now we're talking global markets expanding as well. Remarketing revenues become a significant component to an ITAD service provider's profit and value. Right, this is the time when we introduced a whole new revenue channel into our world. Operations become more sophisticated to ensure that we're driving efficiencies, right, to control cost, because we are adding overhead at a rampant pace because the industry's expanding, the market's expanding, secondary markets are expanding, volume is expanding. So now operationally, how do we manage all that? This is the phase right now where we started connecting back to our core roots tied to the RL world, right? Because before, when we were processing assets as an ITAD service provider, right, it's really not a whole lot of standardization because it was clunky. The business is very clunky. But today, when you start talking about volumes and expansion and growth and global and the product mix that generates such scale and variety, you have to start building in efficiencies to continue to drive profitability and efficiencies within your business. Then we shifted into a significant shift in towards increased data security, right? All of a sudden, our customers now are really paying attention. 2004 PCI DSS, the HITECH Act, highly publicized data breaches, really drawing attention to this data piece, right? The data piece of it. At this point is when we shift to becoming a core focus with our customers. Our customers now are really fully budgeting for an annual number to pay for ITAD services, where in the past, this was not happening. Internal groups today Our customers have entire internal divisions managing ITAD. No longer one person, two people, maybe someone in Europe, maybe someone here. There are today entire business units managing ITAD. And then from our world, from a service provider's world, right? Chain of custody. All of a sudden becomes a really big focus. Again, control, right? Responses, increased focus on chain of custody in response to the areas of greatest risk. Data sanitization, transportation, right? And recycling. This is where on-site services get introduced to the mix. This was all about improving accountability, data security. This is the transition phase, right? This is where we really transitioned from piecemealing how we service our customers, again, to being a core service component for enterprise, for the channel, for OEMs. Now we're working across all spectrums, all segments. Now we get to today, where we are today, in the current state of our industry. I mean, think about it. 20 years ago, did you guys think we would be sitting with 25 different state regulations that we're dealing with, 67 different global regulations? This is where we are today, right? We are now shifting to the mode of being a much more regulated industry, as you see with GDPR in Europe and coming, what's happening in Brazil. It is all now shifting over to the U.S. Excuse me. We've got state data privacy laws. We've got federal laws coming that have been introduced. So this is a big shift of from where we've been to where we are. We've got e-waste regulations, right? Global recycling market. This is something that's changed and that we are all feeling, right? In 1 year, China went from accepting 66% of the world's recyclables to 1%. So what does that mean? For me, I see it as opportunity, right? We're going to see this new shift. We're going to see a shift, a transition. In our world today, recycling, right? We've been pushing that out. That's going to come back in-house, right? That is going to come back onshore, right? So there's going to be a huge shift of where we were, where we are going today from a recycling disposal perspective. Whereas before we were all able to send stuff elsewhere, it's going to have to come in-house, right? That's going to create opportunity, also challenges. Higher cost, right? Who's going to take on the burden of those higher costs? So another shift of where we are today and how things are shifting and changing within our industry. But there will be opportunities for domestic recyclers in this space, for sure. Data privacy continues to expand, continues to grow, continues to really be a juggernaut in our space about how we manage and how we grow and how we continue to expand, right? In the U.S., we've got the California Consumer Privacy Act. January 1 is the target. In Brazil, we've got their version of GDPR. It is August 15th. We've got draft legislation in all these different countries. Data privacy laws are going to be extremely, extremely focused on us and what we are doing over the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, and it's going to have a huge impact on who we are and who we continue to grow up to be in this space. I wanted to just share some interesting stats. If you look at metric tons of e-waste, 2018, 50 metric tons. 2021, 52. It is all the way up to, I think it is 2000 and, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. 2050, they're expecting 120 metric tons of product materials to be processed. This was interesting to me when we're doing our research. because we all talk about data breaches and the risk and the financial impact. On average, today, from the World Economic Forum, an average cost of a data breach is $3.2 million. Now, that's the core cost, right? That is not all the peripheral costs that go along with it, and market loss, valuation, consumer confidence. I think the last number I saw after the Target breach, the Target data breach, was that they had lost an estimated $5 billion associated with consumer confidence. So it's impactful, right? Lifespans, enterprise phones, 2.1 years. But it's interesting when we talk about Internet of Things, when you talk about the volumes, right? The growth of enterprise endpoint device shipments from 2018 to 2023, down 3.2%. But it contradicts it, right? Because we're saying the metric tonnage is going up. So what does that mean? Our traditional product set's changing, right? Our phones, our laptops, our tablets, our desktops, our all-in-ones, our LCDs. That is the product set that has driven our business over the last 10, 15, 20 years. That product set will be a piece of where we are going, but it will not be the product set that drives us over the next 20 years for the future, right? Internet of Things, it's going to change it all. How? Well, we're all still trying to figure it out, right? What does it mean? We're still all trying to figure that out. But one thing is for certain, product set and what we are seeing return today is already starting to shift. Products are getting smaller, less materials, right? So the whole dynamics of the product set that we manage is changing significantly. And then from a service provider, right, from a company that lives in this space, how do we adjust operationally, logistically, remarketing, value recovery, to ensure that we can provide the same services we provide today at a higher level to our customer base? Speaking of value recovery, right? Organizations are accelerating refresh rates. Again, as I said, assets are becoming increasingly recyclable and more energy efficient. The global secondary market is growing, right, at pace. So how do we all, as U.S.-based companies, continue to expand our reach and manage what we do in those global markets? And as always, the volatility of the secondary market, how do we control that? Can we control that? What are the opportunities for us to manage at a levels to ensure that ASPs are something that doesn't have a negative effect and impact on our business? So in this space, right, so today, client organizations are much more resource-heavy and savvy. I don't know about you guys, but it's amazing. 10 years ago, you'd go into a customer and they'd say, hey, what are you doing with your assets? And they'd say, oh, come on, we'll take you down to the basement and walk you into a room and open up, and it'd be stacked to the ceiling with stuff, right? Customers aren't doing that anymore today. Our customers understand this space. They understand the risk. They are much more savvy today than they've ever been. Risk mitigation continues to be paramount. Geographically centralized program management, meaning as they continue to expand, how are our customers, right, managing global business? Today, we're experiencing, I think as an industry, this shift to, first of all, there's nothing that's not customized anymore. Standard ITAD doesn't exist anymore today, right? And non-global business is far and few between. Everything is global, everything's customized. ITAD now, in our space today, in our world, has shifted, right? We are now cross-functional. We have the CFO, we have the CEO, we have the CTO, we have procurement, right? 10 years ago, we weren't dealing with procurement. Procurement is now managing this business on our customers' end. Sophisticated understanding of end-of-life hardware values, right? Our customers, again, are getting savvy. And we are now part of our larger customers' core lifecycle management solutions. The global ITAD market continues to bifurcate into a few large global providers that increasingly compete with many small regional providers. That's from Gartner in 2018. So from a service provider perspective, right? How does our world continue to shift? Gartner's saying it's splitting. You're going to have big companies and your smaller regional companies. I don't think that's a big change from what we've experienced over the last 10 years. Operations has become more and more highly custom, focus on lean, efficiency, Six Sigma, all RL language, right? All reverse logistics language now creeping back into ITAD space. Expansion of services, we do more today than we've ever done before, right? On-site, depot, redeploy, returns, refurbishment, repair, in warranty, out of warranty. We go in to talk about ITAD today, many customers are asking us to be able to do all the above. And there's a global perception. As I spoke about earlier, there's not many customers today that aren't global anymore, right? Everything is global. So there's a global perception in the marketplace today, meaning customers expect to be able, their partners to be able to provide a global experience, a global service, right? So there's another expansion of our market, whereas before, we could all, talk about the Americas, right? Canada, U.S., down to LATAM. We could build a business in that space. Today, you better be able to cover every region that a customer lives in today. And now where I really want to spend most of the time with you guys. From my perspective, ITAD is more relevant today than ever. Right? I think we see it. We see it with our customer base. We see it with the opportunities that are in the marketplace. The Aero was a big disruptive change in our space, for sure, no doubt about it. Some good, some bad. Some folks will benefit from it. Some folks didn't benefit from it. But ultimately, the shift from Aero and their shift out of this space has created an opening for us to continue to expand and do more and be more for our customers. I mean, a lot of people look at it and say, well, if Aero couldn't do it, how can anybody else do it, right? Because they were the largest ITAD provider in the space. And here's, I think a big part of what drives and makes us more relevant today than really ever before. Technology advances. The rapid growth of mobile devices and the explosion in the volumes and variety of connected internal Internet of Things devices are forcing a reevaluation of traditional ITAD processes by both users and vendors alike. Another statement by Gartner in 2018. And I would agree with this, right? The dynamics of our market today, the shift in our market today, the changes, the waves that are happening in our market today, we are all having to reevaluate how we do business, and our customers are having to reevaluate how they engage with us to do business. Here's another shift. I thought these numbers were really interesting. 66% of companies today allow remote workforce at some level. 16% of companies today, are fully remote. 15% annual increase in BYOD from 2019 to 2024. Again, significant shift, right? More remote employees. How do we manage that? How do we logistically manage that? More BYOD. How do we manage exposure for our customers in an environment, a BYOD environment that we don't control very easily? Right? How many of you guys have gone home and pulled a drawer open and seen 5 old cell phones? We all have it, right? Same with laptops. I think I can go into my office today and there's 3 laptops sitting in my office. I use one. Those are exposure points, right, that are going to continue to challenge us in this environment, in this industry. The IT life cycle. There's a big shift in consolidating vendors to manage the overall life cycle of assets, right? We are transitioning to a managed service environment, right? Everybody kind of shudders when you hear managed service, right? But that's where we're going, right? We are now following a little bit of a commodity path, right? And we are going to be a core managed service for our partners and our customers as we move into the future. There's a growing importance and focus on BI, right? We keep hearing about BI, and we'll connect some of these dots here in a minute. Also, the rise of the circular economy, another term that we all hear about. But these are all pieces that are changing our environment today and where we're going as an industry and as service providers. So, what's going to drive us? What's going to take us where we're going in the future? Right? This is where I really wanted to spend most of my time. This is really some of the hard things to think about as I was putting all this together. Risk mitigation is not changing, right? It's still going to be a part of our core, of who we are, what we do, how we do it. Think about it. At some level today, we're insurance companies, right? We're underwriting trillions of dollars in risk. That's a core part of who we are. We underwrite trillions in financial risk for our customers. We secure their brand, right? Think about the diversification of the industry today. Not our industry, but just general business. What does diversity equal for us? Diversity for us equals risk, right? Because again, as our customers build a diverse strategy to go and expand, whether it's through acquisitions, and they go acquire a company in São Paulo, Brazil, right? And they don't integrate that company into their core business. How do we manage that business, right? How do we manage that risk for them? So change at some level equals risk for us. Growth and expansion equals risk for us, right? Again, as I said, everyone is global. Global is great. Global is expansion. Global is new, but it limits our ability and our customers' ability to manage risk. Every program is customized equals risk, right? Think about it today. It's like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, standard ITAD. We all did standard ITAD. We do not have a single partner today that's standard ITAD. Everything is customized. What does customization create? Gaps. Gaps that we can't control. When we lose control, we are at risk. Our partners are at risk, right? Our customers are at risk. But on the upside, what does the risk mitigation of the future mean for us? Partnership. In my world, in our strategy, in our vision, partnership is prosperity, right? Because as we continue to expand partnerships, as we continue to be asked to do more and be more by our customers, there's components of it that we just don't do, that you don't do, right? Not all of us can do it all. So there's a true opportunity in our marketplace today to drive growth and expansion through partnerships, real partnerships, not layers, right? Not margin layers, but true formalized partnerships where each company is working together as an extension of each other, something we're doing today, and is going to be a core part of the future expansion of this industry as we move forward in the future. Technology and platforms. What do I mean by that? So technology, of course, is always changing. Platforms is about control. Again, using the word control. Data capture, data control, data distribution. Consistent platforms across all entities, across all regions, right? Our customers rely more and more on us today to provide data at all levels, Data is power, right? Data is knowledge. They manage their business virtually off the data that we provide. So a single system, a platform control is essential to the future of where we're going. Customization creates gaps. Platform controls gaps. The right platform, the right systemic control, and automation closes those gaps. Technology is going to be driving speed and efficiency in what we do. We're going to continue to have to drive value back into our operations. We're going to have to continue to drive value back into assets, right, to drive profitability and the ability to expand our businesses. From a remarketing perspective, platforms provide standardization. Standardization puts us in an auditable environment of control, right? It goes back to the records retention, record accounting, so that we have tracked processes and know exactly where every asset ends up at every level. Think about, 20 years ago? We didn't have any of that, right? There were people doing deals with, I'd pull up in my truck and get a truckload full of assets and figure out how to go sell it. From a remarketing perspective, you'll see a huge shift in the future of platforms and environments that get ITAD customers closer to the end purchaser, the end buyer. Some of you guys aren't going to like hearing that, but that's the reality. As our market continues to constrain from a profit financial perspective, the volumes, who controls those volumes, are going to get pushed closer and closer and closer to the end purchaser. And that's just a reality, right? You've got large companies that are managing large volumes, control of those volumes and control of those assets closer to the end user means a higher profit. ITSM integration. I like to call it ITAD automated, right? Integration of ITAD into the asset management lifecycle. How cool is that? We are now that core that we are part of integrations into tools and platforms such as ServiceNow, Aricent, right? Why is that important? Control. Again, control. Our customers are now a button away from data destruction, FMV values, pickups, all of it consolidated, automated into one platform, right? What does that mean for our customers? Fewer resources, lower overhead, lower cost, right? And from our end, what does that mean? Efficiencies, fast pace, right? We're driving assets back through the process at a higher pace. Value recovery, BI, all captured in one platform. FMVs predetermined, all at the push of a button. That is part of the future of where we are going as an industry. Global reach. We've talked about global quite a bit today. And I've kind of repeated this multiple times. Every customer, every program today has a global connection at some level. It is global. One global ITAD platform removes risk, controls loss inherent with a regional approach. Again, if I'm a customer, if I'm a company based in the U.S., I acquire a customer or a company in Brazil, and I leave ITAD, I leave asset management to that Brazilian entity to be run in region, I lose control. I have no control of what they are doing in that country. Today in our space, we have to be able to facilitate both support of that customer here in the U.S. and that customer in Brazil with a like approach, a standardized approach on a single platform that gives them control, working within the parameters, the rules, the permits, the regulations, and everything that happened in Brazil. Again, we're being asked to be more and do more than we've ever done before. But those are real scenarios and real situations. So global footprint, global capability is critical to our future success. Again, I'm going to stress this. Partnering equals prosperity. Excuse me. True global partnerships that are formalized, where companies are extensions of each other. That is a win for everybody in the space. Value recovery. Excuse me. Again, value recovery is going to continue to be a core of what we do. No doubt about it. Our customers expect it. It's a part of our financial ability to be successful in this space. But our product base is going to be diversified. Again, Internet of Things is going to change everything for us. When? We're still trying to figure all that out, right? Removing touch points, getting closer to the end buyer, controlled environments, how we leverage platforms, controlled experiences, like new versus refurbished. How many of you guys have customers asking you to take product closer to like new today? Not just simply refurbished because they're savvy. They know now that they can get more dollars out of those assets. So now we're talking about another expansion of our operational capabilities. Now we're managing parts as well, because to be able to take it back to like new, I've got to be able to have the right parts supply chain to be able to do that. Controlling ASPs, managing risk, managing the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of the secondary market, critical to the future of what we're doing. Lastly, workforce demographics. I think this one's extremely important. There's really two buckets to this. Number one, operational workforce. Continuing to change, right? How do we compete with the Amazons of the world in our space, right? And still stay profitable, still stay relevant. How do we do that? How do we compete with an ever-shifting skill set need? And ensuring our labor aligns with that skill set need. Our skill set is doing this, right? We have to ensure our labor is tracking down the same path. We have to be able to transition this business from clunky to streamline. That's a different skill set. That's a different labor market. The second bucket, think about it. This has traditionally been kind of a good old boy, old school environment, right? That's reality. Look at schools like ASU, Arizona State. Huge supply chain school. ITAD's starting to creep up into their criteria from an education perspective. So we're going to have a whole nother wave of the future ITAD experts coming our way, right? Are you investing in those folks? Are you investing in this younger environment, this younger group that looks at technology and uses technology, right? Think about us. The first time we saw, well, me maybe. First time I used a computer, I had no idea what I was doing. They live from a mobility perspective. They're going to bring new ideas, new visions, new skill set, new capabilities. And if we are not all embracing that, we're missing an opportunity to get better, right? A lot of men in this room. How are we diversifying our workforce to include more females? We need more females in this space. It's a reality of it. Sorry, guys. Nothing against the guys. But that's a reality, right? We need a shift in this space today. We have to take ITAD from being a traditional, old school, boys group environment to competing with the Googles of the world, of environments and places and cultures that this younger group wants to come work for. It's critical to our future. So in closing, I want to make sure I stress to you, ITAD is more relevant today than it's ever been in the past. And I hope some of the points that I've brought up today drive that home to you. This is a critical mass opportunity for us. This is a critical time for us as an industry to shift, to grow, to expand, to continue to do more, be more for all of our customers. The evolution continues. The evolution of what we do today continues, and it continues at pace. I hope you guys feel that. This market, our space, our industry is changing every day, and it's changing fast. The days of just doing ITAD, those are gone. If you're not building a business that is about expansion and growth, the days of just doing ITAD are gone. We will continue to be required to expand our capabilities, which means we will continue to be required to take on more risk and the exposure that comes with that. We'll also be asked to continue to expand our reach, which means we will take on more risk. The ITAD of today will not be the same ITAD of tomorrow, for certain. There's some of us that we've all worked together for many years in this space, right? We all used to talk about, if we're still just doing ITAD in 5 years, we won't be relevant. The reality of it is today we are at that tipping point. We are at that peak. And ITAD is shifting at such a significant pace. Today is the day when it's real. The ITAD of today will not be the ITAD of tomorrow. Our ITAD customers of today will not be the same ITAD customers of tomorrow. Lastly, thank you. I appreciate you guys allowing me to get up here and speak to you. I hope I didn't bore you to death. I actually am on time, which is unbelievable. I appreciate it. If you guys have time, I'm going to be here for the next couple of days. If you have questions, don't agree with something that I put out there, please come find me. I think are we going to do some questions now? We can do 2 questions. 2 questions if anybody has one? Or not. Again, thank you guys. Over here.
So how has software as a service and cloud services changed the dynamic of the data center? Could you repeat that question for me? Software as a service, cloud service model, how is that impacting the data center model on the ground?
Well, we continue to see consolidation, right? That is certainly something that has been a huge impact from, again, I'll speak from our side of the world, right? From the Ingram side, we continue to see consolidation in the data center space, right? It's interesting, though, at the same time, you talk about the big 4 or 5, right? There's still some peripheral regional data center environments that haven't gone away as much as we thought it would be. We're going to continue to see that space, I believe, consolidate. There's going to be more and more opportunity from a support perspective as well. The data centers are so large, and there's so much opportunity in that and diversity in product. It's had a huge impact on us and how we have grown our business strategically. You'll see here in the near future, data center space is something that we are coming out with some new announcements of new partnerships that are, again, you've heard me talk about partnership as prosperity. That's how we're going about it. It's shifted at such a pace, the hyperscale, the hyper environment. It's put us in a situation where we've had to think outside the box to just be able to keep up with it, right? If you think about us, distributed assets has always been our core, right? Now to be able to go into that data center space and see this shift, it's made us go into directions that we never thought we would go before, but it's for the better. Yeah. All right, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.